It's time for the Super Bowl gambling show. You've been with this RotoWire show almost all season. We missed those crazy Sundays with London games. Otherwise, we were always here for you with Jim Coventry from RotoWire, and of course, bringing the heat every Saturday, John Ryan. Now, John, as you know, 28 years he's been a professional bettor. In the last 2 years, 74% against the spread on his max bets in the NFL. That's always the tough nut to crack. 65% in the Super Bowl. You can just up that percentage through the roof. 18-5 in the last 23 Super Bowls, looking to make it 19-5. You follow John at John Ryan Sports One. You follow me on Twitter at Jim Coventry NFL. And before we start, if you want my 21 pages of free Super Bowl notes, go to my Twitter profile, pinned to the top. Give me a follow, retweet the prop threads that I have with all 13 props, and you will have access to that. I'll DM you that back, and life is good. John Ryan, tell everybody how you are today.
Hey, I'm doing great. I just cannot wait for this game to start. I feel like I'm a player in the locker room, and I remember how it used to be, Jim, and you would just get more and more crazed, and you just couldn't wait. And I'm about in that situation right now, I think.
Oh, it's totally there. Now, tell people how they can find you in that predictive playbook.
Sure. I don't have 21 pages, guys and gals, but I have 5 pages of really super duper trends and angles that take a very, very deep dive. I'm going to mention some of these on the show. And, hopefully I don't go too deep and you think I'm kind of out there. But if I am, I am,
It helps us win money. Like John and I always tell you, we lay out a detailed process behind what we do. If you agree with our rationale, bet it. If you don't agree, don't bet it. Use your money wisely. We're resources. Nobody's right 100% of the time, but we will at least give you the rationale to make an informed choice. Now, John, as we look at the Super Bowl, and once I tee this up, you go as long as you want, give everything you want, and then I'll do the props after that. The Eagles opened very initially as a 2.5-point favorite, but that number moved pretty quickly to 1.5. It stayed there since January 31st. It has not budged. Now, the Eagles are the clear public side. According to DraftKings Sportsbook, 71% of the money, 68% of the betting volume has been on Philly. Also, 56% of the people are betting over 51 on this game. That's kind of a background. John, just dive right in. Tell us about your Super Bowl thoughts.
Well, I appreciate that, Jim. I'm going to dive right into it here. No introduction. I'm just going to get right at it. But I will tell you this, what's fun about this career in pro betting when you work with numbers, and Jim, you can relate to this 100%. As you said, 28 years I've been doing this. So that means I've watched 28 Super Bowls. I've had 5 where I did not have a play, obviously with the 18-5 record. But I've also had a lot of good fortune with a few wins of the Patriots where the Seattle Seahawks forgot that they had a running back named Marshawn Lynch. And, you can't handicap that. So don't be misled by the 18-5. I could easily be 18-6 at the end of the weekend. I've lost 2 in a row, Jim, of my 5% max bets. I've never lost 3 in a row during this run with the 74%. That doesn't mean that I won't. I know over time, I keep playing these over the course of the year, that will work out. So bet with your head and not over it is what I'm trying to say, especially with these prop bets. Jim, you and I have talked about pizza money bets. Well, there's so many prop bets out there now that I almost feel myself doing slice pizza bets, meaning that
Yes.
I'm only paying for 1 or 2 slices instead of the whole pizza. And you have to be able to risk the amount that if you're at a Super Bowl party and we all like to brag a little bit. Oh, I got this prop bet and it's going to win. If it doesn't, you have to be able to laugh at yourself. That's what the Super Bowl is all about, is having fun. It's not necessarily about winning all your bets and making $1 gazillion. Anyway, let's get into the game, Jim. The team that has averaged fewer points per game allowed over their last 3 games, that would be the Eagles, who have allowed an average of 10 over the last 3 games. The Chiefs, 19.8, which is also very good. They're 16-5 straight up, 76%, 12-9 against the number for 57%. I kind of lean towards the money line here. I've put a little bit of money. I'm giving it away already, but I put a little bit of money on the money line at minus 120, which would be the Eagles. The team that has allowed 4 or fewer points per game in their last 3 games on the differential are 10-2 straight up, 8-4 against the number, 67%. Teams that allowed 13 or fewer points per game over their last 3 games, 7-2 straight up and against the spread. Now, here's where I'm going to get into a name. And you don't have to know how this is calculated, but it's called a Pearson correlation. Very important in my modeling and my work. It simply tells me which set of parameters in a box score or a game mean the most, and especially in the Super Bowl. So time of possession becomes increasingly more important as we get into the playoffs and we roll into the Super Bowl, culminating with the most importance being in the Super Bowl. So what we have here is since 1989 for playoff games, the correlation tells me that there is a very high, meaningful relationship between winning the game, winning against the spread, and time of possession. So therefore, the team that has the most time of possession in the Super Bowl has a very strong likelihood of winning the game and covering the spread. That would be the Eagles. The Eagles have, I think, the best offensive line between the two teams and the best defensive line. And Jim, the other intangible, I got to mention this, is the chemistry that Coach Sirianni has installed and nurtured on this team. Instead of giving a talk tonight, it was noted in a lot of media places that he's going to have an open mic for all the players who want to talk to their teammates to talk. And I'm sure there's going to be some, joking around, but there's going to be some very serious talk. And to play that loose and let the team have open mic the night before the Super Bowl, I think that speaks volumes to what we'll see tomorrow, I hope. Let's see. Quarterback pressures is another big one in the Super Bowl. So these two teams were 1-2 during the regular season. Eagles led the league with 32% of all plays run, resulting in a quarterback pressure. That's a hit or a sack. And best averaging quarterback sacks and pressures at 13.74 per game were the Eagles. The Chiefs were 29% pressures of all plays run against them, 13.32 pressures per sack. So they're pretty close. But again, the Eagles, especially Fletcher Cox coming off a bye week, he is a monster to begin with. And when he has that extra rest, he finds like not only another gear, like another 3 gears. And I think he's going to wreak havoc on that offensive line tomorrow. So let's get to my predictive models here. 85% probability that the Eagles score 28 or more points and have the same or fewer turnovers as the Chiefs. Teams in Super Bowls, 10-3 straight up against the spread, 15-1 straight up, and 13-3 against for the Eagles the last 3 seasons in their regular season and playoff games. So you can see 10-3 straight up when they score 28 and have the same or fewer turnovers. And the Eagles obviously do very, very well in this role. The Chiefs, however, are 4-11 against the spread, 27% when allowing 28 or more points and having the same or more turnovers than their opponent. And Super Bowl favorites that were a playoff team in the previous season, they are 10-11 straight up, 6-15 against the spread, 9-12. That actually works against the Chiefs here because they are the underdog in this situation. Prop bets that I like, but there's one other angle that I just have to mention here. And the league MVP. I'm sure most of you have heard this if you've been watching TV at all, but I have to say it again. The league MVP in the Super Bowls are 6-15 straight up, 5-15-1 against the number, 0-9 against the spread the last 20 Super Bowls. Jim, I used to think the Heisman Trophy was a curse. Well, this is way beyond that. Isn't that incredible? Wow. The last MVP to win was Kurt Warner with the best show on turf, LA Rams, 1999. And since then, these MVPs are 0-9 straight up and against the spread. I don't know how I can convince myself not to make that a meaningful angle because I do think the MVP has a tremendous amount of pressure. And even though Mahomes appears to be, loosey-goosey, it's got to be churning a million miles an hour inside of his heart and body right now. It's a lot of pressure to win this game. The prop bets, and then I'll turn it over to you, Jim. I like the under 50.5 in Eagles plus 3.5 at plus 185. These are all found at BetMGM. Under 50.5, Eagles minus 3.5 plus 333. Under 45.5 and Eagles minus 6.5 plus 625. And this one I just like because it's even money. Under 55.5, Eagles plus 6.5. Those are the four that I like just quite a bit. So you can tell that I like the under, and I also like the Eagles for my 5% max bet tomorrow.
Yeah, I love those calls, man. John Ryan bringing the heat. He gave you so much information to work with here. Hopefully he guides your betting advice well, and you're following on this, because this is just some rock solid trends and ideas that John has. And I agree with John in terms of Philly winning this game. My whole prediction came down to 24-20 Eagles. But when I build my prop bets, which I'll get into now, I have to do what John does to a degree, just differently. I'm a fantasy football guy. John's a gambler. Well, we have similar approaches, just a little bit different ways of getting there. Mine is I have to go player by player, literally all 22 players, and I need to come up with matchups, advantages, and see this through. And then I have to determine a game script that I'm expecting to see based on that. And then the game script leads me to the probability of selecting prop bets. So again, we get there kind of the same way. Now, before I get my prop bets, we have Scott has a question. He has, let's see here. The opposition and the Giants were basically over. So, but I don't know the context of the question. How much how much taken into account for the playoffs where the Eagles played the Giants in a I don't know what that's in context or account to what. I don't understand.
You might be saying, because they weren't a good opposition, and because the 49ers lost Purdy in the first quarter, that the defensive numbers I mentioned may not be as relevant. But I would agree with that if the Eagles were a team that was giving up 26 points a game during the regular season, but they're not. They have been consistently the number one defense across the board, the way I see it, or at the worst, top three. So I do think it's very meaningful going into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, definitely. And when I look at this defense, they have a pair of outstanding cornerbacks. They have 5 legitimate, excellent pass rushers in their front 7. They upgraded the defensive tackle position midseason when they realized the team was a liability against the run. Jordan Davis got healthy. They brought in Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph. Now they have a deeper rotation of defensive tackles to time space. You can attack them in the middle of the field some, but like John said, this is an elite defense. Okay, so as I projected this game out, basically the advantages that lead me to this prop are as follows. The biggest advantage in this game, as I see it, is the Philadelphia rushing attack, offensive line, mobile quarterback who is lethal in the RPO game, and Miles Sanders. That rushing attack against the Kansas City defense. Kansas City, as I break down the individual defenders, I believe 4 of their front 7 are liabilities against, are not average, they're liabilities. And in this particular game, I don't think they have the bodies to slow the rushing attack. Now, of course, Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, it knows they want to run the ball. He will do whatever he can to sell out to stop the run. But the problem becomes you have A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, and you have Dallas Goedert. So if you sell out too much, you are leaving 3 amazing receivers in favorable situations. So Spagnuolo has to be very careful how he picks his poison. But the other problem is, and we saw this in the San Francisco game. San Francisco at first had a plan for the Philly running game, and it looked good. But then Philadelphia will change their entire rushing approach. They have many different levers they can pull and completely switch their mode of attack, and they will find out where you want to face them, and they will put you to your weakness very quickly. They'll run counter, they'll run weak side, they'll pull 2 people, they will go outside zone. They will do anything in their power to do this. So I believe that running game will be successful. And John kind of intimated this. They want to shorten the game. They want to limit Patrick Mahomes' possessions. I also see a world where if the Eagles get the ball in their own territory with 8 or 9 minutes left in the game, and either leading or trailing by less than 6 points. I could see a world where they take the entire 8 or 9 minutes off the clock. It's 40 seconds of play, and Mahomes, you're not getting the ball back. We are taking this down the field. Good luck stopping us. And so that's what I kind of see as an idea here. Now, the Chiefs offensively, Patrick Mahomes will find a way to keep them successful. The receivers are beat up. We know that. In terms of the defense they're facing, there is going to be pass rush. Now, the Chiefs have a great offensive line, but on the right tackle side, Andrew Wiley is not a liability, but he's not an ultimate strength. And they will probably put Blake Bell. They'll play heavy personnel. Tight end Blake Bell will come in there. But that's the side where we'll see Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick. That's not a good side to be weak. And on the other side, Orlando Brown is a better pass blocker, but he's prone to speed rushers. And I think Montez Sweat on the left side has enough to exploit that. And then they can't really slide their interior linemen out because they have Javon Hargrave in the middle, and even middle linebacker TJ Edwards can bring the heat in. So it's one of those situations where there are pass rushers in all different areas, and it makes it very, very difficult for the defense to do much. So altogether, my point is this. Mahomes figures out a way, and Kelsey will get his. We know the Eagles will put a lot of attention on him, but what will ultimately happen is they will put him in a 3-by-1 stack with the 3 for free release. They'll put him on the one side stack with the 3 on the other to put him against one defender. They'll use him blocking and then release him to avoid double teams. They have so many ways to get him open. So this leads to the props. First one, Miles Sanders over his rushing yards. This has been bet up already. I got it very early at 56.5. It's 60 right now. We're still fine. Normally, he sees 11 to 15 carries in most games. Now, regardless, he's gone over this rushing prop total in 4 of his last 7 games and in 12 of 18. So 2/3 of the time, he goes over. Now, in the playoffs, he's lost carries. The Eagles have had blowouts. They've removed him from the game. I believe they've been spotting his carries throughout the whole second half of the season. Back in the first half, we were seeing games at 17, 20, 21, 24. We were seeing that. Now, in this game, there's no next week. I don't think they're going to spot Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders will get all the work they need him to have because, again, you're not playing for next week anymore. They've been all year. So, and he'll play early downs. He'll come out on passing downs a lot. Kenny Gainwell has kind of emerged a third down back, so he'll see work there. But Sanders will see the lion's share of the early down work. And so we mentioned earlier the defense they're facing, very vulnerable. And they're going to have to try different sellout techniques. That's going to lead to 1 or 2 really big runs by Sanders because when they catch the defense sleeping or over pursuing, that's where he's going to get it done. But regardless, I have him conservatively projected 15 carries for 75 yards, which is 15 yards over the prop, but I could easily see him flirting with 100 yards, if not more in this game. Second prop, Jalen Hurts under the passing yards. Now, I bet this one at 246.5. It's getting down near 236 now. It's going down. My projection, before I could go the rationale, my projection is 218 for him. So we're still safely in the under range. Now, Hurts hasn't hit this prop number in 10 of his last 14 games. And this year, the 5 games where he's had very good passing yardage, 4 of those came against teams at the time that were playing lights out run defense, but were struggling against the pass. So they knew going in, we're not banging our head on the wall running. This is a team we could kill through the air, and they did. Minnesota early in the season and Washington early in the season were 2 examples of that. Pittsburgh without TJ Watt. Tennessee before they had the complete slew of injuries. Those were the 4 big yardage games. And then the Chicago game, that was a weather game. It was a very odd game. It was one of those games that we kind of throw out of it, but those were his high yardage passing games. In all of the other games, Jalen Hurts tends to go low on the passing yardage because they have the ability to have an easier time running the ball, which they will here. So all that said, we were probably not going to see a ton of pass attempts. I mentioned earlier, I don't think the Eagles want to play in a shootout. Hurts has attempted 25 or fewer passes in 8 of his last 14 games. This is another one of those games. So I'm going under. Let's do 2 quick ones here. Jerick McKinnon under the rushing yards. Now, we may remember weeks 13 through 17, McKinnon was on a roll. A lot of that was as a receiver. And he's actually had, now his prop was bet down also. This started out at 22.5. It's down to 19.5. Low number to start. He's been under that in 4 of his last 5 games, and he's been under that in 14 of 19 games. So he rarely hits 20 rushing yards. In the games he went over, the terrible run defense of the Raiders, Chargers, and Texans, those were games he went over. So it was an easy pickings here. He also went over in the playoff game against the Jaguars, but that was a weird game. Mahomes got injured. McKinnon played 63% of the snaps because they were using him to protect Mahomes in that particular game. And then when they handed off, he was able to take advantage of some defensive deficiencies the Jaguars showed at a later point in the game. Now, this game, again, we know the Eagles aren't the best run defense in the world. But they don't, in the second half of the year, just 4.09 yards per carry. So I don't see big runs. And actually, I think his rushing total attempt is going to be low. I only think he gets 4 rushing attempts, 14 yards. So comfortably under 19.5. He's okay as a receiver, but not in the rushing game. This last one is not a big bet. It's plus 500 odds. But it's something like John says, pizza money or a slice of pizza, maybe. Travis Kelce to score 1 touchdown, not a lock, of course, but it's probable. 1 touchdown, that's minus 125. But if he scores 2 touchdowns, it's plus 500. Now, Kelce scored his last 5 playoff games. He's also scored in 8 of his last 9 playoff games. And that's during his time with Patrick Mahomes. Now, the other thing is, in those 8 games, 3 of those, he scored multiple touchdowns, including against Jacksonville. And we already know that the receivers, although off the injury report, they're not 100%. Juju Smith-Schuster is not 100%. Kadarius Toney, probably not 100%. Regardless, they don't want to mess with the outside corners. Now, I know they'll move those guys in motion, the slot and all that. But when they get in the red zone, it's going to be about getting Kelce the ball, most likely, as it's been for much of the year. Now, when we look at the Eagles' numbers against tight ends, they only gave 3 touchdowns to tight ends. So that might scare people away. And even of those, we had like backup score, Jake Ferguson, Tegan Quintoriano, Irv Smith. So, but the Eagles haven't had a murderer's row of tight ends. Now they faced George Kittle. They didn't have a quarterback. So kind of throw that game out. So that said, it's plus 500. Johnson, slice of pizza money, plus 500 odds. Don't go crazy. This isn't one we're saying run to the bank, cash it in. But it's worth a little fun. John, final words of the Super Bowl.
Well, I will say this. The lowest scoring quarter, Jim, is the first quarter. And my gut tells me that this is going to be a heavyweight boxing match. No team is going to want to make a mistake in that first quarter, and they may play pretty close to the vest. Both of these head coaches are gamblers, though. Andy Reid is known for offensive linemen being involved in a play in the red zone. So, one of those bets that I think you and I both like is offensive linemen to score a receiving touchdown. I think that's a no-brainer with this matchup. But back to the live in-game betting, over the last 21 Super Bowls, the average lead change has been 3.65 per game. There has been 7 Super Bowls during that span where the team didn't have a lead. A lead change is defined as a team goes up 7-0, and then the opponent ties it up. If they tie it up, that is classified as a lead change. But what I'm getting at is the fact that if a team scores on your team that you bet, whether you like Kansas City or Philly, it's a great opportunity to start building a middle position in a game that we think will probably be pretty close at the end. Like Jim said, the last 8 minutes could be an Eagles drive for the memories, where it takes off all the time and they win, 24-20. So keep that in mind, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the Eagles, obviously, and then with, slices of pizza. If the Eagles get out to a 7-0 lead and Kansas City ties it up, there's no panic, but I'm going to take the Eagles again. If the Kansas City takes the lead and the Eagles score, I'm going to take Kansas City. And I think I'm going to have a pretty good middle, Jim, where I might be able to win, all of them. And there's no guarantee of that, of course. And then the last thing I'll mention is the total. We both definitely like the under here. A couple of my other, colleagues have big plays on the under already. So that seems to be the play to go with. However, if this first quarter of this game ends up 0-0, which has happened more times than you would think, the pre-flop closing total line has still produced a 5-1 record. So what does that tell you? That you're going to get a chance to bet the in-game total if the score ends up 3-0, 3-3 at the end of the first, which is possible. You should be on the over, in my humble opinion, because things just really start cruising after that.
Oh, that's fantastic advice. And if people are watching the Super Bowl, they're going to want to bet in game if they can, which most people can who are in legal states. I think that's great advice. We got a couple questions. D. Herberger. Eagles D gets high praise, but their schedule is kind of light. The Chiefs, some of the Chiefs, I don't know what vis-a-vis means, but hence the tight line. So the Eagles defense, and between me watching every snap of every game, I also look at the Pro Football Focus player grades to kind of cross-check myself. And what I'll tell you is this. Darius Slay and James Bradbury, the corners, they rate out in the excellent range. Not quite elite, not nearly in the average range. They are very, very strong cover corners. In terms of their pass rush, 5 of them grade what's called in the 80s or 90s, which is outstanding to elite. So the grading for these individual players shows what they have going for them. They do have weaknesses at linebacker and pass coverage. They are a little bit weak there. They can be exploited, and expect the Chiefs to try to lean into that in the middle of the field a bit. They do and also now the safety play, there's also a little bit of concern there. So the Chiefs are going to try to attack them in the middle of the field, but this Eagles defense is an excellent defense. They're not, the 2000 Ravens, they're not the 85 Bears, but they are a solid unit with flaws, but they have enough. See, here's the thing. In today's NFL, if you can cover and you can rush both of those, you're in a great spot in any game you play. John Ryan, thoughts on the Eagles D?
I think the SOS, strength of schedule, is a little bit exaggerated now in the NFL because, after all, it's been about 20 years where the NFL set it up to be parity. And we have teams that, basically don't make the playoffs because of injuries, not necessarily because of their skill set. So I think you have to be careful with saying that the Eagles played a weak schedule. You can say basically the same thing for the Chiefs. I think their strength of schedule was 13th or 14th. But you can't help who a team plays. And if they have injuries and they win a game and that team goes on to a losing record, doesn't take away from the winning record team. So I just would throw that out there.
And then Scott has a couple questions here. Talking about, try to get this clicked on here. All right. Does the style of this game fit Kenneth Gainwell? Sanders is the clear lead starting running back. Remember, Gainwell benefits by being the change of pace guy in the playoffs. The change of pace guy, you see this time and again. The defense is prepared for a specific style of runner. You bring in the change up and you see these burst gains of yardage. You see it very, very frequently. But make no mistake, Gainwell's gotten the majority of his work when these games have kind of been figured out. They've been spotting Sanders, as I said. Definitely been spotting him since about week 8 or 9. And Gainwell is more of the receiving back. So I think if somebody's going to bet a prop on him receiving, I think there's potential merit there for that. But I don't think in this game, I can't see a blowout. Cannot see a blowout happening. Can it? Of course, it's the NFL. I don't see it. I think if there's a blowout, then Gainwell has certainly a chance of getting rushing yardage. I don't think he's getting a lot of rushing carries. My guess is upwards is 5. That's the upwards. It might be 2 or 3. So personally, at 32.5 rushing and receiving together, it's still a tough call because we don't know what his role is going to be. We don't know if they're going to factor in the screen game against his defense. That might not be an area of focus in this game. I don't necessarily think it will be. So if you like that one, definitely bet it. I just haven't made a strong case for Gainwell because of the uncertainty of his role. John, thoughts?
Well, I think the one thing I'm going to watch right in the beginning of the game, and this ties in with the running backs for the Eagles, is that I really can't remember a team in the last 10 years at least that has been able to, while on the field, transition from run blocking to pass blocking and take advantage of what the defense is showing. Of course, Andy Reid and his staff are going to try to disguise that. But if you see cover 2 shell, simply that's just 2 guys deep, they are going to run the ball until Kansas City changes that to a cover 1 shell, to which then you're going to see play action, you're going to see read option, and that's where the Eagles offense is really, really good. So depending on how well Kansas City disguises that, which I think they're going to have to do something to disguise it. I think that's what you look for. And don't be surprised if the Eagles run like 6 or 7 times in a row or pass 6 or 7 times in a row.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Alex says, good morning. Good morning, Alex. Great to have you aboard as always, too. So before we start closing out, remember, on my Twitter page at Jim Coventry NFL, I have 13 different props explained out. Find the rationale, see what you like, bet them. If you want my 21-plus page guide of Super Bowl notes, just give it a retweet, give me a follow, and I'll send you that very happily so you can enjoy that content before the Super Bowl. John Ryan, I want you to tell everybody again about the predictive playbook, how they can access it, what you've got going on over there.
Well, we got predictiveplaybook.com. You can also find me at John Ryan Sports and the number 1. And just like Jim, I have a resource that I think is pretty good. And if you want to get a copy of it that you can use, not just this Super Bowl, but you can update it and use it forever, just send me a message on a direct message on Twitter or my email, johnryansports@gmail.com, and we'll get it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. These are resources that you can utilize. Again, you make your own decisions, but we'll give you all the ammo that we've got to help you do that. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, please smash the like and subscribe button. Follow RotoWire. And if you want 2 days free behind the paywall at RotoWire, go to rotowire.com/try. For John Ryan, I'm Jim Coventry. Oh, we have a question. Hang on, Alex. We got to get Alex's question. All right, we got to get Alex. All right, first quarter under 10 points for you. Last 20 on Super Bowls, only 3 have gone over 10 points. John, you were kind of confirming that as well, right?
Yeah, if it plays very, very slowly, like they're playing in the mud and it's 0-0, I would recommend going over the second quarter total because that is by far the highest scoring quarter in the NFL. And we might add that the Eagles led the league in second quarter scoring. So if it's low scoring in the first, I think you're going to see some fireworks in the second.
Trying this again for John Ryan. I'm Jim Coventry. Everybody enjoy the Super Bowl.